Hey everyone, thanks for coming here today. While preparing this talk, I was remembering that I came here 7 years ago for the last time, so it's actually great to be back, and thanks for being here with me at the moment. We're going to talk about Jitsi. Who here knows or has heard of Jitsi before? Okay, a few hands. Quick reminder, or for those who don't know. Jitsi is a set of open source projects targeted at allowing you to create video conferencing solutions that are secure and scalable. It's also a set of APIs and SDKs that allow you to take existing applications and video enable them. So everything that we're going to see today, you can either deploy it yourself or you can use our existing deployment to turbo boost your app and give it video. Last, it's also a community. We are a bunch of developers. Some of them are not necessarily working for Atlassian. And part of my trip here in the US this time around is I'm going to go to the Google Mentor Summit because we were an organization for Google Summer of Code. So we always try to get more people involved in the project. As he said, I work for Atlassian. Atlassian acquired Jitsi a couple of years ago. The company behind it. I'm not sure everybody knew. Here's a little bit of trivia about that. So Atlassian has this application called HipChat that recently got an update with Stride, which is a team collaboration tool, and it can do video. Before they acquired Jitsi, they were using an SDK provided by AdLife, a provider called AdLife. Now, it turns out that Snapchat bought AdLife and shut it down because they wanted to use it only for themselves. So then what do you do when you rely on some cloud provider as a service of some sort, and then they decide to do something else, or they get acquired, or something goes down? You're left out in the cold. So Atlassian, I guess, went shopping, and well, here we are. So my point here is, and that's why I set the title that way, that you can self-host all this. So you don't even need to trust anybody. You can just grab the code, which is Apache 2 licensed, and run it your own. So some of the things that we do for Atlassian are, power the video in HipChat and Stride. And we have these all-hands meetings every week. We connect all offices and everybody, so the founders give an update and so on. So we use it in these scenarios. For mostly what we do is, what we focus on is video conferencing, so meetings. Tons of meetings happen every month. We have some numbers. And whether you like them or not, they're going to happen. So we better make them great, right? So for us, it's a bunch of them. And we just make sure that you have all the features you need to make your meetings productive, fast, yada, yada, yada. So I could spend another talk slot talking about each and every feature that we have, but today I'm going to focus on the ecosystem part of it, so the whole package, everything we have to offer. But I would like to show you one feature that I think is crucial when it comes to video conferencing, which is adaptivity. That is what happens when you're in a video conference with multiple participants and you don't have enough bandwidth, your network goes up and down, or what's going on. So our baseline scenario is we have no network problems, everything is good, Yana is happy, and we have the main speaker is on 720p, 30 FPS, and every of the thumbnails is at 180p and 30 FPS. We have less resolution on the thumbnails thanks to simulcast. So we make sure that we only send you as much video as you need. Now, let's say that, let's limit the network I/O to 3 megabits per second. We can do that with the Mac OS's network conditioner right over there. And then when we do that, what will happen is that the quality will lower to 360p and 30 FPS. We can see that the label here that's behind this will show right now is an SD, or it's no longer HD, and the frame rate of the thumbnails lowered to 15. This is thanks to SVC. So we do this, so we send you less video, but you still get a great a great video experience. Now let's go even further down. So we limit it to 1.5 megabits per second. And when we do that, all we can do is send the main video in 360p, still at 30 FPS, but we just stop sending any of the thumbnails. So you don't get any video for them. We will switch over to avatars right here. So you still get some representation for the users. You can continue participating, you hear them, but when it comes to video, you will only be able to see the active speaker at this resolution. And if we go even further down to 200 kilobits per second, which is like barely enough for video, it actually turns out that it's not enough. So the video is struggling, and now we will see how it says that the video was suspended because the user doesn't have enough bandwidth. So we give you a good user interface or a good indication of what's going on so we can adjust to the bandwidth that is available. Now let's say that we are back to having no limits in the bandwidth. So in the graph down here, we will start to see it climb up, and we will go back to 360p, 30 FPS, and the thumbnails will continue to flow and will go up. And after a little bit, we will go back to 720p. So this curve right here is what we call the ramp up. So the bandwidth estimation code will basically start realizing, oh, we have more bandwidth, we have more bandwidth, we have more bandwidth, and as soon as we learn that, we'll start sending more video until we are back to the experience we wanted. So this is one of the multiple things that we work on. And I'm not going to go into detail for every other feature because I think everybody has a mental model of how a video conferencing solution should work. So I'm going to show you how we do that in other places. But if you want to test it for yourself, which is the best of all, like instead of hearing this guy up here talking and saying things, you go to Meet Jitsi and have a call with your colleagues. As I'm going to show later, we have a scalable infrastructure, so it doesn't matter where you are or how many people you want it with, you should be able to host it and judge for yourself. Now, one of the things we have focused on in the past, well, over a year, is making sure Jitsi fits all sizes. So as Chad very succinctly pointed out yesterday, he said that people, without thinking about it, adjust how you interact with different devices as they show up to the market. So we didn't have tablets, and at some point we had tablets, then we have fancy smartphones, and we interact with them differently. So different devices have different UI requirements. So we're going to go through a little bit how we deliver this video experience to all these different devices. And first one is, of course, the desktop or laptop. So this would be your typical user interface. You have a bunch of buttons, a toolbar, and all these distributed that way, and it's designed to work with the mouse and all these things. But because we have all that screen real estate, we can add more things, and we can make little details which we think matter. So for example, we have nice indications when events happen at the conference. So you will get a quick box here saying that somebody connected, and with that somebody's name right down there. Then when that person disconnects, it will change and say that that person disconnected as well. If a person is having connectivity issues due to, for instance, packet loss, we know that, and we will show you, hey, that person is having connectivity issues. It's not you, it's him. When a participant has muted their audio and or video, in his representation of the thumbnail, we will see that his microphone is crossed, his video is crossed. We still see his avatar, so we have an idea of what's going on. And we know exactly why we're not seeing him is because he muted his video. Otherwise, we would see overimposed, oh, it's having connectivity issues or whatnot. When there is video, we know if we're receiving HD or not. We don't scratch our heads and think about it. We got conference controls. So we receive each individual audio stream and video stream, so we can operate on them individually. We can decide if we want to adjust the volume of a participant. Maybe he's too loud for us, so we can soften it a little bit, because we all know we have different microphones, and this happens all the time. And if we are moderators, we can also kick them out of the conference if we don't like them anymore. And of course, we're all geeks. We care about these details. So we have a detailed view with connection information. So what is the estimated bandwidth? How much packet loss is there? What's the resolution? What's the current frame rate? Where are we connected? Because we recently made an optimization where if a call happens only between two participants, so it's one-on-one, we will not go through the server. We will go direct. And even use a different codec because there is no need for going through the server. And you can see all that here. It's seamless for the user, but if you want to know, you can know. Then when it comes to knowing about like yourself, here is the local user representation where you can change your own display name, but this blue indication on the side is the volume meter. So if you see that, but somebody's saying, I can't hear you, then it's like, well, you may have a problem on your hearing, and because the audio is making it to the other side, and we can measure all these levels. So these are the tiny little details that we think make a video conference great. And now if you're thinking, well, Saul, I like what you're selling me, but can I have it? Well, you don't need to build it yourself. Even if the code is open source, you can use our Jitsi Meet iframe API to embed this experience into your own web application that is doing something else. I'm going to show an example a little bit later, but let's see how hard would that be. So all we need to do is load our external API JavaScript file and initialize some options, like what's the size that we want for the conference, even though if we make the selector where we want to paint the conference a specific size, we'll just fill it up completely. Decide what room we want to go to, and then initialize the Jitsi Meet external API object with these options. So what will happen is that we will embed all these things you have seen in your own web application, and you can go to town with it. People are using this already for example, the Isabel guys and the Matrix guys are using it. And we're trying to encourage people to do this because if you already have a way for two users to reach each other, having them like exchanging a URL over a back channel and having them create a conference view so they end up in the same conference is so easy. So that's one thing you can do, and you don't need to host it yourself. If you want, you can still use the same thing, pointing it at your own deployment, for example. Another experience, of course, is mobile. As Chad also mentioned, WebRTC mostly happens on mobile these days. And earlier this year, we launched Android and iOS apps. They are as open source as the rest of the things. And what we have worked on is on creating the same conferencing experience, but, well, on a smaller screen, of course. So as you can see, it's linear. It doesn't have that much clutter, if you will. We're not on feature parity yet, but we have multi-party video working, authenticated deployments, audio-only mode. Like, it's 80% there, but as you know, the remaining 20% takes the 80% of the time. So it's always a continuous improvement. Now, a cool thing about the mobile apps that I like to point out to people is that while by default our apps operate on the meet.jitsi domain, if you have your own deployment of the Jitsi stack, all you have to do is put the full URL there in the box, and we will join your deployment. So you don't need your own app. You can use our app to join your own deployment. However, you may have other features you want to add, or having the Jitsi Meet app to join your own deployment may not be that convenient. So what you can do is use the Jitsi Meet SDK to embed this capability into your own app. So we made it in the easiest possible way that we could think of. So all you have to do is write a little bit of code to embed a new view where all the conferencing thing happens. So we set ourselves apart from other SDK manufacturers where you need to do all the controls and put the view here and the large one here and the button there and everything. Because our line of thought here is that mostly everybody thinks of conferencing in a similar way. So we will give it to you in such a way that it already works the way you expect out of the box, and you have some settings you can tweak, like I don't want that button, so hide it please. But otherwise, what you get is what you saw on the screenshots. With just a few lines. We have a video that we're going to put out on YouTube where I built an application for iOS from scratch and embedded Jitsi Meet into it in 12 minutes. And this was from create the project, add all the boilerplate, bring in the SDK, and do all the stuff. If you already have your app, adding it should be a lot easier, but it's not about time, it's about all the resources that you would save by doing so. Now, taking it even smaller, we now have a different set of interactions since Apple Watches or watches in general showed up. And recently, as recently as last week, we had an internal hackathon at Atlassian, and Pavel and myself worked on a Jitsi Meet application for the Apple Watch. And the first thing that you need to decide is what experience are you going to give your users when we're talking about a watch. And I think Apple does a great job at outlining on their human design guidelines what's the expectation. What should an Apple Watch app do when it, as a companion to an iOS app? So what we did is to give you conference controls. So if you have your phone in your pocket, you can start a conference from the watch because, oh, I have this conference, so let's join. And you can mute yourself, so when you're using your headphones, you're talking, and then you're done, you can mute yourself, or you can hang up. You see the conference name. So it's a basic interface, but then again, the UI needs to scale for the device you're using, and in this case, it needs to scale down. So this is the in-call view, and this would be the meetings view. So you get a list with the meetings you have, and just by tapping one, you join it. And we created a pretty cool video that I want to show you. So that's one of the last things we've been busy with. The code sits on a branch because it was a hackathon, 24 hours, lots of virtual duct tape. But they will eventually make it to the app, and it's as open source as the rest, so you can also base your own watch apps on what we did. And now I'd like to make a transition to the server, because these are all client applications, right? The browser, the phone, the watch. But what powers this thing? Or can I run it? How? So the quickest way to run it is to go to jitsi.org/QI for quick install. And this is a shortcut to our quick install guide. And I'm going to create a quick summary here, and you'll see how easy it is to do that. In fact, there was this at FOSDEM earlier this year, and at Camellia World, I did a dangerous demo about it. I just did a Jitsi Meet deployment in, well, less than 3 minutes. So that's all you need for the basics. Then you can go to town with configurations and stuff. So all you need is just like as any other Debian-related thing, which is the distribution we love and support. You add our key and our repository to your sources list. Then you update and you install Jitsi Meet. That's all. So at this point, you have a working Jitsi Meet installation. And it doesn't require any configuration. So one of the things we also take very seriously is the fact that you shouldn't need to tweak a million knobs to make things work. Things should work well by design. So ideally, you don't need to change anything. Now, of course, I can't read everybody's mind and think if you want authentication or not. That's something you can turn on and off and require some extra config. But the basics are there. And one thing that our colleague Damian added, which I think is pretty cool, is if you don't have a TLS certificate, let's encrypt is built right in. So all you have to do is run a script we have, and we will do all the cert shenanigans with certbot and reconfigure Nginx and do all that stuff for you, and it will just work. But some of you may wonder, how do we do it? So we run a pretty large infrastructure. We run actually a few infrastructures. One of them, for instance, is the one that powers Meet Jitsi. Another one is the one that powers all Atlassian customers. And we are AWS all the things. So I want to show you how we scale these up. So the diagram looks weird, but let's go from right to left, and I'll show you. So the first thing we got is this box here, which we call a shard. So for us, a shard is two things. A signaling node. So this box here is a single machine. So a signaling node contains an Nginx instance, because we receive all the traffic via web. Then prosody, which is an XMPP server. So Nginx will communicate with prosody, because what we use is XMPP over HTTP for transport. And Gkofo is the conference focus. So it's where you will join a room, and then Gkofo will request that media gets exchanged between users. Now, the entity that does the media forwarding or the media routing is the JVB or the Jitsi video bridge. That's our SFU or selective forwarding unit that will do all this magic with 30 FPS or 15 FPS or HD, not HD. The entity responsible for routing all the video is that. And we have two of those servers on each shard, and they are in an AWS autoscale group with a trigger. So the idea is, if there are too many conferences, we need more capacity. Once we hit the trigger, a new JVB instance will be put up to service, and we will have more capacity. In our case, the trigger is based on bandwidth, because you will first saturate the network before you saturate the CPU, because all these applications are pretty much network bound, because we don't touch the video payload. We don't need to transcode or anything. If you were on the FreeSwitch talk, they have a different approach where they mix video, and this is a CPU intensive task, but this one is just routing, so it's network related, and that's why it's bound to the network. Now, so this group of servers, we call it a shard, and we have one shard on each Amazon availability zone. Then on each of these availability zones, we also have a couple of HA proxies. And I'm going to tell you in a second what we use those for. And who load balances the load balancer? Well, ELB. So the Amazon's Elastic Load Balancer is our SSL terminator. So SSL terminates right here, and then it sends traffic to either of the HA proxies in a given shard. So if you look at this image, you see that it's symmetric on the horizontal. So all this is a single Amazon availability zone, like US East or US West. Now, which one do you hit? Well, we make that decision with Route 53, which is the DNS service provided by Amazon. So you always hit the shard that is closer to you, let's say. So if I'm here, and I do a DNS lookup for our Meet Jitsi service, we will hit the shard in US West, I guess, or East, I don't know, one of the two. So we will end up in this ELB. Then the ELB will terminate SSL and forward the request to one of the two HA proxies that are here. Now, the HA proxies have connections with all the shards. So here I have 2 shards on the screen, but we have 1 shard on each availability zone. And then the HA proxies have a stick table, which is a mapping between a room and a shard. So let's say the room, there's nobody in the room. We are the first to join a conference. So we will host the conference in our shard, let's say, in the one that is closer to us. So if we join US East, we are in the US East shard, and the conference is happening here. Now let's say that a friend of mine joins the conference from Amsterdam. So he does the DNS lookup, and he'll end up in the European shard. So he will go to a different shard. SSL will be terminated. He will enter one of the 2 HA proxies, and then the HA proxies have this synchronized stick table that I told you about, and you will see, the HA proxy will see that this room is actually happening on that shard on US East. So it will join, it will send a request to the Nginx on that shard. So this architecture allows us to have a low maintenance deployment, because if something is wrong, we can just say, okay, like dump the entire shard, I don't care, I'll just look at it later. And then the load will be balanced across the rest of the shards. That's one of the advantages we have. And of course, another one is the fact that if you are geographically close, you will always use the server that is closer to you. So if everybody is in this room joins a conference, we would all join a US East shard. We won't go to Asia Pacific or to Europe, because that's what's closer to us, and that will help us have less latency, more better. So this is how we do it. It doesn't mean everybody has to do it that way, but I just wanted to share that you can deploy it yourself. You can then scale it up. It's not like typically with many projects, the how do I scale it up question is always like, yeah, well, we have a contract for that or something. Because all the work we do is open source and the rest is internal for Atlassian, we are able to share how we do it. I'd be happy to hear thoughts on other infrastructure ideas that you may have. And there are many, and this is ours. And so I'd like to share some stories or some different use cases of this whole ecosystem that we've built over the years. So first one would be Stride, which is Atlassian's complete team collaboration suite, which recently got released. It's a team chat application that can do video meetings, amongst other things. And those video meetings are powered by Jitsi and by the infrastructure similar to what you see. So all these idea of having this user interface and yada yada, basically what Stride does is use this external API and use the iframe to join a room and do some customization so that the style is a little bit different, but they don't do anything that you cannot do. Another recent use of our iframe API is Isabel. For those of you who don't know, Isabel is the new and better Elastics. And so it's an asterisk-based PBX with a bunch of UI to make it a lot easier to use and stuff. We teamed up with them to add video to this. So the way we did it is we used the external API to embed video to their user web interface. So when users log in to check their CDRs, change their settings, they also have a video option there, and they can create a meeting and people can join their meetings and so on. And they are using our publicly available deployment on Jitsi. So again, not anything you can't do. And in the future, we hope to add an option. So if you have your own deployment, you can also say, hey, host the meetings in my deployment instead of doing it on the public deployment. But both options will be available. Another one is Matrix. So how many of you are aware of Matrix? Just a few. So Matrix is an open network for decentralized communication, which sounds very, I don't know, vague maybe. So what they set out to do is a federated protocol for, well, chat and everything. aimed at like replacing XMPP and IRC and all these things. And we were very happy when they told us they were going to use Jitsi for their video needs. So what they did is, well, as I said, they have already a channel for communication between users. So it becomes very easy to create a URL and then exchange it via a back channel. And when you press a button, you both join the same thing, and you end up on the same conference. So they kind of fulfilled our dream of, because we make it URL-based, very easy to create, they can add video on top of what they had without a lot of work. And they are also adding, using our mobile SDKs to add video to their mobile apps. That is not finished yet, but they did launch the desktop version already. So that was very nice to see, because here I'm trying to show you showcases of different uses of the same thing. So one is a proprietary application of a for-profit company. The other one is integrated into a PBX-like thing, which is an open source project, a different take on communication by Matrix. And the last one, which is kind of near and dear to me because I found it and I think it's so cool, is Los Reyes Magos TV. It's a project by a Spanish company. And so Los Reyes Magos is Spanish for like the wise men, for those of you that haven't been educated in the Catholic shenanigans. They come and give presents to baby Jesus on the eve of the 5th of January. So in Spain, it's a thing. You polish your shoe and you put it next to the fireplace, and then the next day you get presents and everybody's so happy. So what they did is they used Jitsi so that the children could call and talk with their wise man and ask for, oh, I would like this, I would like that, and they would be like, oh, but have you been naughty, have you not? So they published a video. I don't have audio for it, but I just want to show you what the deal was. So you see the guys on a costume, they customized the interface with the logo up there. And the idea is that the child here is very amused because he doesn't know the truth yet. Talking with the wise man, like, oh, I want this present, that present. Thanks to this person, we ended up creating our Jitsi Spanish users support group. And I was like really surprised to see that they had used Jitsi like that, and we didn't even know. So sometimes this is the great thing of open source, that people are using your stuff for cool things and you don't even know. If you want to do it yourself, well, all the source code is on GitHub. You're free to use, and I just suggest that if you are thinking of choosing like a platform provider, a project, everything, just have a look at Jitsi. So I'm gonna go here and emulate one of my favorite movies. So you wanna make some choices, choose HD audio and video, choose a mature SFU, one-on-one calls or large video conferences, advanced bandwidth estimation, simulcast, choose to be your own cloud, privacy by default, we take that very seriously, choose mobile apps and SDKs, the complete package, and open source. So choose Jitsi. Thank you. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to take some.
What about SIP interop? Do you support interacting with SIP agents in any shape or form?
Yes, in many shapes and forms. 45 minutes, gotta be selective, pun intended, on what we put in there. So we have two solutions for that. So one is Jigasi, our Jitsi gateway for SIP. Jigasi allows you to interact with a Jitsi Meet conference with audio only. So for example, that's what we use for PSTN call-in and call-out. So you can invite people to join your conference in the PSTN, and from the PSTN you have a phone number you can use to join. In fact, that is deployed on our free tier. I think calls are limited to 2 or 3 minutes, but you can test it out. And then recently, and this I presented at Kamailio World, So for those who may want to check it out, you can check the recording. We have a new solution that is targeted at physical video rooms that some large companies have, or well, not so large, companies have. We have a bunch of those at Atlassian, and we came up with a thing. The project is called Jitsi. It's also on the GitHub org, and that allows you to join a conference with video. And it's targeted at a room that has like a big LCD TV and a camera and a SIP device. We have tested extensively with Lifesize, and you can join a conference like that. Another way to join a conference that also uses Jitsi is live streaming. So we can also stream the conference live to YouTube for those who want to participate with video, but not necessarily be an active speaker. They are a passive spectator, and you can do that with the broadcasting infrastructure that Jitsi provides. Yes?
Hi. Thank you for the presentation. I have a question about the configuration you have in HEpoxy. It's a Lua script or something else?
I don't know. That is what my DevOps colleague Aaron works on mostly, and Oleg. So I can't tell you exactly what we use, if it's Lua or not, but if you're curious, I can find out and let you know.
Okay. Thank you.
Two questions. Is Jitsi still able to connect with an OpenFire server or Asterisk directly? And then the second one is on the Meet Me is authentication. How is that handled?
Okay, so is Jitsi able to connect with OpenFire? Yes. So we have a community contributor, actually, Gus, who works on this actively because their customers use OpenFire. And he has a plugin called, I don't remember, but just reach out to me and I'll put you in touch with him. He works on this, and what he did is integrate GCOFO and the JVB so that instead of using our prosody server, they use their existing OpenFire architecture. And then Asterisk, well, so we use WebRTC for our calling, and the way we exchange, we convert SDP into a protocol that some of my colleagues created, and it's XZEP. It's called Colibri, so it's not, and we then turn that into Jingle. But so let's just say that our use of XMPP is more of an infrastructural and architectural choice, rather than specifically wanting to surface XMPP. In a sad way, everybody dumped Jingle. So right now, connecting via Jingle to places is kind of hard. So how to connect to Asterisk would be via SIP with what I told Luca with Gigassi. So with Gigassi, you could like have a Jitsi Meet conference, do something with an Asterisk server, which you could use, for example, for calling out to PSTN. So you can invite people that are on the mobile to a conference and they could hear everything. And I'm gonna use this opportunity to actually mention that one of the interesting things of the upcoming Asterisk 15 and their multi-stream support is that we can offload much of the work that Gigassi has to do to Asterisk, because Gigassi receives all the individual audio streams, so we could call into Asterisk with all these streams and then have Asterisk, which is a great mixer, mix them for a legacy device. There's some tweaking that will need to be done before this works, but I think we're there. And your second question, which was authentication, we do support it. So in two ways. You can enable it only for moderators and accept guests, or not, have everybody need to authenticate. So when that happens, when you join a conference, you are greeted with a pop-up that says, hey, this conference requires a moderator to join first. Are you that person, or do you want to wait? If you have credentials, you say, no, I want to be the moderator. You enter your credentials, username, password. These are XMPP credentials in prosody. and then you become the moderator. And for example, in this scenario, you can kick people, but they cannot kick you. And once you have joined, the rest will join. And the second scenario is if you don't allow guests, but you mandate authentication. In that case, everybody is greeted with a username password field, and until you type it, you cannot join any room, basically.
A long time ago, we looked at Jitsi, and it was connecting to OpenFire at the time, and there were issues with carbons. If you were logged in on one client and you made a message, your sent messages and the replies only ended up on one device. Has that issue been resolved?
I don't really know, because and I understand there's a little bit of a naming confusion. So I think what you talk about is Jitsi, the desktop client, which is a multi-protocol communications client. But all this belongs to the Jitsi Meet side of projects, which is our WebRTC video conferencing solution. It also happens to use XMPP because, well, it's a good choice, but just to make a quick joke here, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like an A, right? So we use XMPP, but they don't necessarily follow the same things. It doesn't do carbons. But I don't know if the desktop client, which keeps being developed actually in an open community, is not us who do the releases anymore as a community member, if they added carbons or not. I can put you in touch with who knows, or you're also, of course, free to join the users mailing list and ask their...
If you had Jitsi Meet on two devices and you were authenticated on both, would the content be synchronized?
No, because we use, no, it won't be synchronized. If you have Jitsi Meet on two devices, no. The idea of Jitsi Meet is video conferencing, and there is an auxiliary chat, but we don't put a lot of resources on it because usually this experience gets embedded into a larger experience. So for example, take the example of Matrix, right? So Matrix or Stripe, they're already clients that can do group chat, and they have all the bells and whistles and file upload and this and that and that. And then they integrate Jitsi Meet for the video component. So you would get these carbons and all these things, but just via other means. So we have a chat built into the interface, but it's a little bit crude, to be honest. And right now it's only available on the web. It's not available on the mobile apps yet. Any more questions? Well, it's been my pleasure, and I'll be around. I've got stickers if you want some. So thank you, everybody.